Hey guys, welcome to Get Busy Watching. I'm your host, Honest Dan. Let's talk TV shows? Yeah, here's a different one. In commemoration of the upcoming Birds of Prey, the fantabulous emancipation of one Harley Quinn, I've decided to travel down memory lane and take a look at the ill-fated 2002 TV show simply titled Birds of Prey. First, a little background. The show was created by Letta Kalogridis. You may not know her, but you sure as hell are familiar with her work. Her credentials include the critically maligned Alexander, Pathfinder, Terminator Genesis, and Shutter Island? Alita Battle Angel? Jeez, if that's not checkered as fuck. She also serves as an executive producer, not that I know what that is exactly, for said films, as well as for The House with the Clock in Its Walls, which I found to be surprisingly good, and the box office juggernaut itself, Avatar. So the woman would definitely go on to get some serious creds under her belt. But that's who created it. What's Birds of Prey about? Years ago, a great battle was waged between Batman and the Joker. Joker ended up shooting and paralyzing Barbara Gordon, aka Batgirl. Despite Joker's eventual defeat, another tragedy would fall upon the Batman family when his great love, Selina Kyle, aka Catwoman, is murdered right in front of their then-teenage daughter, Helena Kyle. In his grief, Batman disappeared. Years later, Batman has become a myth. Helena, now known as the Huntress, with metahuman powers of her own, has since teamed up with Barbara, now going by the moniker Oracle, and fights crime in New Gotham City. However, their partnership is interrupted when a runaway teenage metahuman girl named Dinah manages to track them down after seeing them in her dreams in hopes of understanding who she is. Together, with the help of good cop Detective Jesse Reese, they hit the streets of New Gotham and fight crime. The show only lasted one season, but has since developed a cult following over the years and has even returned in a fashion thanks to CW's big crossover event, Crisis on Infinite Earths. But one has to ask the question, why? Was this show some kind of hidden gem that was unappreciated back in its time? Well, speaking on my own behalf, my honest answer is probably not. But kinda? Okay, let's get a few details down with my own history with this show. I remember meandering through the movie section of Fry's Electronics and remember seeing this cover and going, wait one fucking minute here. Is this an Underworld knockoff? What the fuck is this shit? That cover never left my mind. So I checked it out on YouTube and liked it enough to, well, buy it. By the way, it's probably more accurate to say that Underworld ripped off its poster from Birds of Prey because Birds of Prey came out in 2002, and Underworld came out in 2003, the tail end of it. But I guess either way, dark, brooding protagonists standing on a statue in the dead of night overlooking their city isn't exactly new, is it? Anyway, full disclosure, the show's not really that good in the strictest sense, but there's a few things to keep in mind. One, it's semi-quasi taking place in the future of the Burton Batman universe. Also, despite Harley Quinn being 10 years into her popularity at the time of this show, she still hadn't quite hit the mainstream popularity that we've been seeing this past decade. So to have her, Harley Quinn, the main antagonist of her own TV show, that's actually kind of ahead of its time if you really think about it. But there's no denying it. This show is definitely a product of its time. Keep in mind, this was back in the early 2000s where superhero properties hadn't quite hit their stride like they have today. But what does that mean for the show now? Does it hold up any better than it did back then? Well, that's why I'm here. In my opinion, the show had its fair share of high and low marks. So, I'm going to be running down my top 5 favorite and 4 least favorite episodes of Birds of Prey. Number 5 favorite. Episode 4, 3 Birds and a Baby. A woman with a baby is attacked by thugs. Though the baby is saved by Huntress, who also dispatches the thugs, unfortunately doesn't save the woman. Bringing the baby back to the clock tower, the birds take care of the baby that they've named Guy. But the longer the baby stays in their care, they suddenly realize that Guy is aging at an unprecedented rate and has even more surprises the older he gets. Let me just get this out there. I know, it's absolutely stupid that the birds didn't leave the baby for the authorities. The only reason why Huntress brings that baby back to the clock tower is so the rest of the episode can happen. It's stupid, which is why it's low on my list of favorites. With that said, what they do with the episode is actually not that bad. For one thing, even though this show isn't exactly known for its powerhouse acting outside of Dinah Mayer because she's just the fucking shit, this is where Ashley Scott really shines as Helena becomes smitten with this baby, struggles with mentoring Guy, and even facing her own demons in the process. It's a surprisingly heartfelt episode. Yes, it's ridiculous to have the need to subvert the notion that women automatically have a maternal instinct and instantly know how to take care of a baby, but the reactions from these women who are taking on a role that's outside of their comfort zone and growing increasingly attached to the baby is charming in its own right. Certainly not the best of the best, but surprisingly good for what it is.
I was actually good with it. Helena, don't poke the baby.
Number 4 least favorite. Episode 1, The Pilot. Dinah Richmond arrives in New Gotham after years of seeing Oracle and Huntress in her dreams, desperate to know what it all means. Upon her arrival, she witnesses a man seemingly go crazy and inadvertently kill himself. After a near-threatening situation of her own, Dinah meets Huntress and follows her to her hideout and ends up helping Oracle and Huntress with their investigation into the death of the individual. Yeah, this show saw a declining viewership as it went on. And I wouldn't be surprised if a majority of that viewership dropped off simply from this very first episode. First impressions are everything, and this was not the best of. Running down the list of reasons why, that first iteration of Huntress's outfit, yeesh, that was not flattering. Or maybe it's too flattering? Thank God for, well, every episode after. The writing is especially egregious. We see highly advanced technology that is never showcased again in the show. There's some seriously dated sound design. Seriously, how does a laser sight make a whoosh sound?
So, what exactly am I looking for?
It's a pretty lame intro to an already not great show. But here's why it's kind of high on the list. It's got some pretty exciting cameos. First and foremost, that's Aaron Paul. Yeah, Breaking Bad's very own Aaron Paul as a creeper, almost rapist, who has about 2 minutes worth of screen time. But the absolute kicker? Mark Hamill, briefly, ever so briefly, reprises his role of voicing the Joker.
Knock, knock. Who's there? Batgirl. Past tense.
Yes, there's a blurry live-action actor playing Joker, who is criminally not Mark Hamill. But really think about that. This was the closest we ever got to Mark Hamill playing a live-action Joker. How nuts is that? Yeah, this show didn't have a strong start, but it definitely has some interesting caveats.
You don't know me. You don't know anything about me. Let's just run the clock out here. Call it good.
Number 4 favorite. Episode 11, Reunion. Helena's 5-year high school reunion is fast approaching, and she's none too thrilled to see familiar faces, especially when most of them are creepers and or drunken entitled jerks. However, the need to go is increased when some of her former peers are murdered by an invisible metahuman. Simultaneously, the murders have attracted Detective Reese, who is dangerously close to discovering Huntress's true identity. This episode is a lot of fun for a number of reasons. For one thing, Helena and Gibson are the same age. I don't know why that trips me out so much, but it really does. More than anything, over the course of the show, you're familiar with Helena's desires to keep her identity a secret from Reese until she'd be absolutely sure that she could trust him. There is some surprisingly fun tension to see him getting that much closer to discovering it purely on chance, as Helena keeps finding ways to avoid him. The fight scenes are pretty fun and probably one of the more humorous ends to a bad guy I've ever seen. But the real kicker why I love this episode is this.
This just isn't a good time.
So you're saying there could be a good time?
Yeah, maybe.
Why is that a big deal? Because of this show 3 years later. I'd kill to do an entire episode on this show because I adore the fuck out of it, but I'm gonna keep it focused. Jericho also co-starred Ashley Scott, and her character is married to, you guessed it, Blam! Ha! I can only imagine how this happened. Pure happenstance? Did Scott drop Christopher Wilde's name and that's how he got the part? What is the story here? I'm so curious. Perhaps on its own, it's just a less bad episode, but knowing what I know, there's a pretty sweet connection here, and that just makes this episode wholly satisfying to watch in retrospect.
Okay, I don't wear a mask for combat purposes. All right, they're itchy, they make you sweat.
Your mascara runs? It's about anything.
Number 3 least favorite. Episode 2, Slick. Slick is a metahuman who has escaped police custody thanks to his powers of turning into water. He then goes on a rampage to kill the cops who arrested him by drowning them. Among the cops on his hit list is Detective Reese. Catching wind of the plot, Huntress tries her best to protect Reese, who is about to get his first foray into the world of metahumans. Here's the only reason why this episode is saved from a worse score. And it's actually pretty consistent throughout the show, the chemistry between Barbara and her love interest, Wade Brixton. They are actually pretty adorable, despite some really cringy dialogue. Other than that, no. The biggest issue here, and with the series as a whole, if I'm honest, is the writing and directing. So Detective Reese has 2 cop friends, right? Slick kills both of them. He has very little reaction and doesn't act at all surprised. And despite his character constantly chasing down the weird homicide cases with unexplainable means of death, it's a weird universe where metahumans are a myth and that they're actually this underground culture in hiding type of deal. But has a hard time believing in the metahuman presence. Even when faced with it, he still acts like a cop and wants to arrest a man who can't be arrested by handcuffs. It's so stupid. Helena complaining that a cop would walk away from $1 million bribe even though she herself walked away from the billions that her father has. It's too much. More than anything, it's just a dull episode. Some subpar CGI, some melodrama here and there. It's just...
Oh, calm down, baby. Nobody has to lose any body parts here.
Don't be so sure.
Number 3 favorite. Episode 5, Sins of the Mother. The now retired Black Canary has returned to New Gotham and has captured the attention of the crime lord Al Hawk, whose father was killed by Canary years ago. However, the matter becomes even more complicated when it's revealed that Canary is actually Dinah's mother, and Canary makes attempts to get Dinah out of the crime-fighting life, met with some resistance by Dinah. Jesus, this episode aged wonderfully. So, full disclosure, my love for this episode may be a tad outdated considering the whole Lori Loughlin scandal thing. So I'm going to be speaking on behalf of me from before all that happened. Because, well, yeah, Aunt Becky as one of the coolest DC superheroes was really cool to me at the time. I mean, I don't agree with the way the canary cry is portrayed, like a whistle rather than a scream, but I was staggered by the commitment of her acting, her sincerity. To make matters even better, Rachel Scarston had someone great to work off of, and her acting was ramped up a lot. Perhaps it's the adopted kid in me, but there was something relatable about her anger at her mother for abandoning her. Essentially, we dive deeper into Dinah's character, and it's incredibly heartbreaking, but you know exactly where she's coming from. And when Canary fesses up to why she gave up her daughter, you empathize with her too. And honestly, this has some of the best fight scenes in the entire show. This episode is full of heart, heartbreak, and more than a fair share of badassery. Yes, I know, but I still like it.
I should tell you, I need an autograph. Yes, I have to memorialize this moment. Hold on, don't move.
Number 2 least favorite. Episode 7, Split. After the kidnapping of a teenage girl by a monstrous metahuman called the Crawler, Huntress must team up with newcomer Darkstrike to track him down before his victim becomes a fatality. The Crawler is Shao Kahn from Mortal Kombat Annihilation. Yup, that's Brian Thompson. But that's the only fun thing that I can say about this episode. The melodrama is cranked up to 11. Both Helena and Reese play their usual game. Reese with his, the law is the law.
Well, I was thinking of it more as the line between civilization and lawless anarchy.
But the law is the law!
And Helena with her helpful guidelines.
I like to look at the law as sort of a guideline, kind of a helpful suggestion.
The code is more what you call guidelines than actual rules.
And then she gets mad and hates all men as a species like a damn teenager, but then starts developing feelings for Darkstrike because he's just like her. Everyone can see where this is going. Also, this episode breaks so many of its own rules regarding superpowers in this universe, and it just doesn't make any sense. In this universe, no two metas have the same powers. Rule broken. Darkstrike has basically the same powers as Helena.
Speed, strength, agility, enhanced hearing and sight. Actually, a lot like you.
But it's revealed in the climax that Darkstrike killed Crawler, and every killing after Crawler's death has been Darkstrike all along. So... Huh? How does that make sense? So... Darkstrike is Crawler. Does he have shape-shifting capabilities? Huntress says he's a parasite.
There is no you. You're just some parasite scamming Darkstrike's body.
So was Crawler some kind of parasitic metahuman who infected Darkstrike and kills his victims by possessing him? This episode is so poorly written that it contradicts itself left and right and is absolutely maddening to watch. To make matters even worse, the ending straight shows Harley Quinn talking to Crawler, who basically, in an implication, tells Harley Huntress's secret identity.
Get me out of here. I'll give you what you want.
And what could you possibly have that would interest me?
That useless minute bitch. You called her Huntress.
This woman. You know who she is.
This never plays into any future episodes. Harley Quinn doesn't discover Huntress's identity until the finale. It's pointless. Very, very pointless. This might be the most frustrating and embarrassing episode of the entire show.
I know you're a little frustrated with Reese these days. Well, actually men in general.
All of them, as a species.
Number 2 favorite. Episode 9, Nature of the Beast. Al Hawk has been released from prison, sporting a brand new face, but one of his own has put a hit on him. His only means of survival against the ruthless and efficient assassin is from the help of Detective Reese and the birds, which doesn't sit well with Dinah. I won't give anything away here, but more or less, this episode directly follows the events of Sins of the Mother. Before I praise the crap out of this episode, I'm going to mention its one flaw. The actor who played Al Hawk in Sins is a totally different actor here. Their lazy way of explaining this? Facial reconstruction. Yet somehow he looks both younger and taller. In any case, that's about the only real flaw. The takeaway here is the powerhouse acting from Scarston and the conflict that divides the birds. Dinah's inner conflict is so compelling, and the constant headbutting with Huntress. Coupled with some additional revelations, this episode really takes both Dinah's character as well as Reese's, giving a complete picture of why he is the way he is. This is probably the best acted and best written episode in the entire show.
It's about commitment. It's not in my nature to quit. Indecision is a weakness. I don't tolerate it.
And my number one least favorite episode? Episode 12, Feet of Clay. An unknown thief has snuck into a highly secured chemical lab and ingested the same chemical that gave legendary Batman villain Clayface his powers, though the thief's powers are slightly altered. In an attempt to discover the man's identity, Helena pays Clayface a visit in Arkham Asylum in hopes of picking his brain for information, in exchange for sadistically asking Helena for information regarding her mother's death. Started the show off with a subpar episode, now we're ending it on the worst one. The problem here is that the pilot was saved by some awesome cameos. This first part to the series finale has no excuses to fall back on. The first major issue is Clayface himself. I get that he's a major villain in the Batman mythos, but was he some criminal mastermind who had a lot of power? How does he know that Helena is Huntress? He name drops Oracle. How does he know about Oracle? Does he know about Barbara's secret identity? How does a man who's been locked in Arkham Asylum for X amount of time stay that informed? Because bad writing said so. To make matters even more frustrating, this episode is weirdly the worst of Scott's acting. I have no idea who to blame here. Was she just inexperienced? I guess so, since it was her fourth major credit at the time. But she was steadily acting from 2001 to 2003, so that may not have been it. Was Scott going through something personal and just couldn't bring energy to that day of shooting? If so, then I'll promptly shut up. Was the direction awful? I suppose that could be it. Joe Napolitano doesn't exactly have the strongest career under his belt. Rest in peace, good sir. I don't mean to pick on anybody, but it's not like, it's not like past episodes have been, worth getting an Emmy for, but nothing ever felt dispassionate. Yet, Scott is holding so many emotions back, which I find so strange. Expression and intensity was never her problem in this show, yet it's a big problem here. It just jerks me right out of the episode, which is already pretty groan-worthy to begin with. Even though it's only half of the series finale, it's still a pretty low mark to end on.
Okay, what do you want?
One more emotion.
And my number one favorite episode? Episode 8, Lady Shiva. Years ago, a younger and more reckless Batgirl tracked down the young thief, Lady Shiva. Thinking that she had her right where she wanted, Batgirl accidentally caused a fire that she thought killed Shiva and one other victim. In the present day, Helena is about to be reunited with her high school best friend Sandra. A series of murders have been happening, calling out Batgirl specifically, and as it turns out, Sandra is Lady Shiva returning for payback. There is one very specific reason why this episode is my favorite. That is Dinah Mayer as Batgirl, y'all. Never mind that I have a huge crush on this woman, but I absolutely love many of the projects that she's been attached to. childhood classics like Dragonheart and Starship Troopers, even reprising her role as Dizzy in the 2017 animated sequel, Traitor of Mars. Piranha 3D, an episode of Castle, she's always been a great talent no matter where she goes. But more than that, the episode is surprisingly poignant, and even highlights the importance of having Alfred around, who is great for emotional support.
But you did what you thought was best to protect people, and you were magnificent at it. But if I may be so blunt, Miss Barbara, this mask, this suit, no longer fits.
Mayor is awesome. The episode is tense for what it is, solid drama, if not a bit off-putting if you were to think about Shiva's age for a bit, but it's still my favorite episode in the entire series.
Not really a live and let live kind of girl, are you, Kyle?
No, not these days. More of an eye for an eye or any available limb.
I know what you mean.
And there we have it. On the whole, is Birds of Prey a good show? Probably not. But do I still like it? Yeah. Even though I didn't talk much about Mia Sara as Harley Quinn, she kind of nailed the role and continues to endear me to this day. She'll go down in history as the underappreciated first live-action Harley, but she'll always have a place in my heart. Can I understand the lack of popularity? Yeah. But do I understand its small, loyal fan base? Oh yeah. It's in the spirit of a lot of similar shows that were out there on the market. It's cheesy, not the best produced, and likely appealed to a small demographic at the time. But for it to still be remembered, and some of the actors even returning to the DC franchise in other capacities, I guess one could argue that it did something right. Thanks so much for watching, you guys. I really appreciate it. Have a great day. Hope to see you soon for my eventual Birds of Prey Harley Quinn review.